Let's go to the next one here. Again, this one I'm going to call main point, even though main point, main conclusion, pretty much the same thing. I wouldn't say there's any significant difference between the two, really. So I'll read it and we'll talk about it. Just because Jeremy's prints were on the gun that killed Tim and the gun was registered to Jeremy, it doesn't follow that Jeremy killed Tim, since Jeremy's prints would certainly be on his own gun and somebody else could have stolen Jeremy's gun and used it to kill Tim. So that's a big run-on sentence here, and not unlike what you might see in reading comp in particular. Let's break it down a little bit. What's the conclusion? Can we find the conclusion to start with? Are there any indicator words?
It doesn't follow.
Nice, excellent. So we talked previously, it does follow that, or it follows that being conclusion. It doesn't follow that would also be a conclusion indicator. And I see Mike wrote that in the chat as well, and Fabiola agreed. So perfect. Yeah, so that's a conclusion indicator. What's an evidence indicator?
Since Jeremy's prints.
Good. So since Jeremy's prints, the word since there is an evidence indicator. Nice. And what's this because doing here? What role does that play? Because sounds like an evidence indicator, right? So this one's a little bit trickier. So they're saying just because, and that just adds some kind of context in the form of tone that tells us because might be evidence, but just because means that alone shouldn't necessarily tell us something else. So we've got a lot of circumstantial evidence here is what they're saying basically. Just because the prints were on the gun and the gun was registered to Jeremy, that alone doesn't give us enough reason to think Jeremy killed Tim. So they're actually de-emphasizing that first clause. They're saying this is counter premise. They are explaining, as you're saying, Rosetta, they are explaining, but they're downplaying that and saying, just because it was that stuff is the case, we can't automatically assume Jeremy killed Tim. And then that final since is telling us why that information in the first clause, in that counter premise, alone isn't enough to guarantee Jeremy killed Tim. So first sentence is counter premise, everything in the first two lines, counter premise. Background that we are then dismissing and saying, isn't that big a deal? Then the third line, it doesn't follow that Jeremy killed Tim, is the main point or the main conclusion. And then the since in line 4 is indicating the primary or really the only evidence supporting the main conclusion. The first statement was counter premise, evidence that goes against the conclusion that we're ultimately downplaying or even dismissing. So as Maggie wrote, Jeremy killed Tim is the main conclusion. And it doesn't follow that is the indicator word, indicator phrase, supporting or indicating that conclusion. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.